Shrek stands as one of the most successful movie franchises of the 21st century, with the titular ogre being the subject of numerous films, TV spin-offs, and hundreds of pieces of merchandise. But if you've been lurking around the internet for the past decade, you've probably noticed his presence in a very different context. A quick sweep across websites such as YouTube, Reddit and Pinterest will show a bizarre array of content dedicated to the franchise, ranging from memes to fan art to fully fledged fan films centred on Shrek and his companions. Whilst a lot of this content seems innocent at best, and ironic at its worst, there has been a slow growth in content which reroutes the franchise from its family-friendly origins to place the characters in a more disturbing adult context. It would be easy to put a lot of this down to simple shock tactics. After all, a lot of this content seems designed to push the boundaries of good taste. But contrary to being disturbing, I actually think these fan creations are a pretty cool example of how the lines between producer and consumer have changed recently, and shows us how technologies surrounding the film industry are becoming increasingly more accessible. Released in 2001, Shrek tells the tale of a temperamental ogre who, after finding himself disturbed by a group of fairy tale creatures, accepts a job from the vertically challenged Lord Farquaad to retrieve sleeping Princess Fiona. Featuring a star-studded cast of Mike Myers, Cameron Diaz and Eddie Murphy, the film was released to both box office success and critical acclaim, grossing $484.4 million over a $60 million budget, and becoming the first film to win the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. This success resulted in a myriad of sequels, 2 televised holiday specials, and a spin-off film entitled Puss in Boots, with the film also amassing a dazzling empire of merchandise, a stage musical, and the film's titular character being awarded a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. The franchise was so successful that DreamWorks even chose to use Donkey as a guest star in their short-lived television series, Father of the Pride, to try and salvage some ratings.
You know what I do love, though? Parfaits. You like parfaits, Larry?
But no buts, Larry, I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do. But let your kid know that Shrek 3 is coming out in 2006.
With Shrek Mania in full swing, it was inevitable that the brand would begin to depreciate, and by the time of the critically maligned Shrek Forever After, audiences and critics began to grow tired of the green ogre, and by the late 2000s, it seemed as though the gates to Far Far Away would soon be closed for good. Except somewhere in the murky depths of his swamp, Shrek was festering away, ready to re-emerge and rebrand himself as one of the internet's leading cult figures. Except this rebrand wasn't coming from DreamWorks, but from the even murkier corners of the internet. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when the internet became enamoured with Shrek, but a good starting point is DreamWorks' launch of the Shrek official Facebook page on December 1st, 2009, in which Shrek would bizarrely speak to users in first person, often with posts filled with Shrek puns. These posts routinely garnered thousands of likes and comments, and it wasn't long before fans began to repurpose the language used by Shrek to create their own original, often incomprehensible content. As Nathan Grayson notes in his article on the subject, Shrek was a brand ripe for evisceration by a generation raised on the very sort of ironic detachment in the Shrek movies peddled in ogre green, onion-laced shitloads. Many of these memes and pieces of fan art used phrases like check yourself before you Shrek yourself as a sideswipe at the kind of ironic pop culture references that the Shrek franchise was originally famous for, whilst other pieces, like the comic Shadow Beg Shrek, seemed to take shots at online fanfiction trends such as slash fiction. But by far the most prominent and infamous example of Shrek's repurposing online was Shrek is Love, Shrek is Life, a series which recounts sexually explicit tales involving Shrek and the devoted children who worship him. Originally posted on 4chan on January 2013 as a green text, Shrek is Love, Shrek is Life tells the tale of a 9-year-old boy who, mocked and abused by his father for his obsession with Shrek, prays to the titular ogre who flies in through the boy's window and proceeds to sodomise him violently. The green text spread like wildfire online and reached its peak when it was re-rendered as a computer animation by YouTube user Psychotic, using Valve's Source engine, with the video receiving over 10 million views. From there, the internet became littered with Shrek-based content, including numerous CGI fan films set to Smash Mouth's All-Star, the establishment of online message board Shrek-chan, and even the creation of a modded version of Slender featuring a bloodthirsty Shrek who stalks you as you search for onions. These pieces of content have in turn spawned countless numbers of parodies, offshoots, and an extensive range of fan-produced merchandise, as well as the fan trend of graffitiing "Shrek is love, Shrek is life" in public places, making this weird new iteration of Shrek arguably a franchise in its own right. All of this speaks to the creation of a massive Shrek paratext, an external type of text which supports and changes the meaning of the original text. Paratexts can be difficult to define clearly, but an easy example is a book in which you have the main text, let's say Moby Dick, and then a foreword by someone who tells you about its publication history. The former is the primary text, whilst the foreword is a paratext, because its existence is conditional to the primary text existing. This doesn't mean, however, that the paratext should be thought of as a secondary to the main text, as paratexts are as important in our understanding of the main text as the text itself. If we think of our understanding of what something is as a compound containing numerous elements, then the addition of a new substance, or text, to the compound can drastically change its properties. A new piece of information about a film can fundamentally change our understanding of it, just like how it's difficult to watch films by certain directors or actors when we learn about their personal lives. In the same way, these pieces of content are altering our understanding of what Shrek is. Whereas in the early 2000s, Shrek was understood as a popular and critically acclaimed family franchise, in the wake of this alternative Shrek explosion online, Shrek is now simultaneously a symbol for internet culture and profanity. What we understand Shrek to be has been fundamentally altered. There's a lot of theories about why someone might do something like this, and we've linked a few of them in the description, such as Jeffrey Sconce's idea of paracinema, concerning content that exists on the fringes of good taste, and their function in defining the term transgression. Or Dick Hebdige's work on subcultures and textual rebellion, who argues that subcultural rebellion often takes place at an aesthetic level. But what I think is more fascinating about this is the how rather than the why, as this resurgence in Shrek's popularity shows us a lot about how both technology has advanced and how the ways in which fans are able to engage with texts has changed. Think about the sheer number of videos on YouTube dedicated to re-editing film trailers, removing characters from scenes, or reworking a film into a new genre through alterations to the music or cutting. Before these platforms, this sort of network of fans in such an immediate fashion would have been unthinkable. Axel Bruns terms this phenomena prod usage, in which internet users have been able to create and distribute content online and achieve the same levels of popularity as their big budget counterparts. In this sense, the lines between producer and consumer have blurred considerably, and the dividing line between professional and amateur has grown smaller. It's not just YouTube as a platform that has facilitated this either. Nowadays, someone can pick up a HD camera or DSLR fairly cheaply online, and tools such as Photoshop, After Effects, or Final Cut are no longer used purely for commercial purposes. That's not to mention the numerous free equivalents of these professional tools which can be found online, meaning that it is now, more than ever, far easier to produce and distribute content than ever before. What makes Shrek such an interesting example of this is the fact that it's a feature-length CGI movie whose animation was cutting edge at the time of its release. Think back to something like the first Toy Story or Ants. The man-hours and budget for these films was astronomical, the technology so hard to master that it required vast teams of people to pull off even competent animation. Flash forward to the present, and technologies such as Blender, Maya, and of course Source Engine have made the creation of CGI content far easier and cheaper than ever, meaning that your average person with a consumer PC and a YouTube tutorial can start creating content in no time. If we do a side-by-side comparison between the original Shrek and some of the fan renderings, there are obvious differences, but given one is made by someone dicking about with the Source Engine on their own computer, it's pretty amazing how far things have come. I mean, creating a fully realised video game like Swamp Simulator is hardly something to be sniffed at, and whilst a lot of content is crass, crude, or downright disturbing, it's an incredible achievement nonetheless, given the historical context. I think what these texts speak to is a fundamental change in the way in which fans are now able to create and change definitions of content. Whilst previous definitions of texts were confined to online discussion spaces, with the rise of cheaper digital technologies, fans are now able to actively remap the definitions of their favourite works through the production of auxiliary content. Whilst obviously a lot of these Shrek videos aren't intended to be taken seriously, the fact is that, whether ironic or not, these fan-produced pieces have fundamentally changed our understanding of what Shrek is. 15 years ago, this picture of Shrek would have been nothing but a callback to a successful animated franchise. Viewed today, it connotes something else entirely. If you'd like to see more from Full Fat videos, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And of course, keep drinking some full fat milk.